Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the Tanya chapter 2, 3, and 4. We're going to do these as a couple together because each of these different chapters are discussing a different element of the soul. It's these three chapters really go together. In effect, we were speaking at the end of chapter 1 that we have a godly soul and an animal soul. But particularly we were saying that the animal soul comes from the four categories, the four elements, fire, air, water, and earth. Both the animal soul and the godly soul comes from these four elements. So they both could be either holy or unholy. But we were just speaking about the animal soul. Now, chapters 2, 3, and 4, we're jumping to, and chapter 5. We're jumping to the godly soul. And we jump into the godly soul in an analogy of an onion. Chapter 2 is speaking about the most inner layer. It's kind of like a three-layered onion. The most inner layer, which is the core of one's being, which is the essence of the godly soul. And this is really the essence of what a Jew is. It's also known as the Intellect. And this is the undividable it cannot become defiled, cannot become impure, cannot become corrupted. It's just essentially pure and one with Hashem and also one with every other Jewish soul. This is the core of what every single Jew is. So this is chapter 2 of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe goes into a discussion of a human body. Just like a human body is made up of many cells. You have cells of the brain, cells of the heart, and cells of the feet. Right? Without a doubt, the cells of the brain and cells of the heart are on a much higher spiritual level than the cells of the feet. But nevertheless, every cell is equally important because without the feet, the person couldn't go and do what they need to do. Even if they had the greatest brain in the world, without the feet, they couldn't get around to do and to activate and to bring that potential of the brain into actuality. So it's a very basic proof, but a very deep proof how every cell is, even though their missions are completely different, and yes, there is, and it's very important to actually acknowledge this, there is a hierarchy in their missions. Nevertheless, paradoxically, they are equal. Even if one's mission is to, so to say, metaphorically conquer the world, and the other one's mission is to draw water, their missions are equally important. That's absolutely critical to understand. Coupled with the hierarchy, that sometimes one's mission could be, so to say, a greater mission. And this is really linked up with the essence of the Jew, who the Jew is, and how they are related with every other Jew. That there is a spiritual hierarchy in Judaism. You have rabbis, and not just a great Torah scholar, but called a Nei HaKehillah, the eyes of the congregation, very, very holy individuals who are really on a very lofty level leading the Jewish people, who have a certain degree of sight and guidance and clarity that others don't have. And they have a very important mission from that hierarchy. But nevertheless, the basic Jew who just has to get up, go to work, and do basic acts of kindness and support his family, and obviously all the other basic mitzvahs of Shabbos and kosher and stuff, which is on a very basic level, they are actually equal, in the effect that they are just different cells of the same body. And without the one, the other is incomplete. This is chapter 2 of the Tanya. There's more to discuss, but we're already nearly 5 minutes in. This is the essence of a Jew, who a Jew is deep down. Then we start to go to the next layer, the middle layer, which chapter 3 discusses. The middle layer and the outer layer, at first glance, are going to seem to be similar, but they're different. Let me explain. The middle layer is what we call intellect and emotions, and the outer layer is what we call thought, speech, and action. Let me say that again. The middle layer is intellect and emotion, which is the deep understanding of the brain and the feelings of the heart. The outer layer is thought, speech, and actions, where a person is consciously holding every second of the day. So a person could be thinking about something, they could be thinking about ice cream, that's not their intellect. A person could also be thinking about a mathematical concept, and that could be affecting their intellect, but that's not their intellect, that's just their thought, that's their garment, their conscious faculty of thought. The intellect is their deep down actual understanding in the brain, and the emotions are the feelings of the heart. So this is the middle layer, the intellect and the emotions. And then the outer layer are thought, speech, and action. Let's focus on the middle layer. The middle layer is what we call the conscious faculties of the soul. By the way, both the godly soul and the animal soul have these layers, the middle layer and the outer layer. We'll discuss this more in chapter 6. But this makes us who we are. But more particularly, the emotions are our driving force. You know, there's stories. I'll just tell you one story now. I think it was Socrates. If I am mistaken with Socrates, is definitely one of the big philosophers that I know for certain, and was teaching their students about not the Jewish class at all, but about how immoral eating a limb of a living animal was. You know, so it was a very intellectually deep class. After class, the teacher goes parts ways with the students. And the students were discussing the teacher's philosophies, and the students, you know, they had a question. They didn't fully understand what the teacher was saying, so they go to this teacher's room and they open the door and they see the teacher eating a limb of a living animal. So they said to him, Socrates, you just taught us not that how immoral it is to do this. Socrates says, in the class that was Socrates, this is not Socrates. So basically what's going on here, and the basic answer is chapter 3 of the Tanya, is that Socrates was intellectually teaching something, but he was living off his emotions. It's also known as being a hypocrite, which, by the way, every human that's got a neck is a hypocrite. So I'm not saying that as a joke. I'm saying that because spiritually, you can't say because I have a beard, right? But you have a head, a big head, and that head is heavy, and that head is clever, and that head has the intellect in it. And then you have your body down below. It's also big. And it's also full of blood and emotion. That's the source of the body. That's the house of the emotions. But there's a thin pipe in between the head and the body called the neck. And this thin pipe, according to Kabbalah, is a restriction pipe. And it's very difficult for the intellect to flow into the emotions. Which is why many people are hypocrites. Which is why basically everyone's a hypocrite on a different level. And it's not... I'm not here to bash down the human species. I'm here to speak the truth and to realize why we are a hypocrite and how can we correct ourselves, not point and blame others and judge others. That's not the point of learning what we're learning. It's about looking at ourselves and seeing how can we correct ourselves. So the intellect is very great in the head, but it doesn't affect our day-to-day conduct, versus the emotions do affect our day-to-day conduct. Sometimes the intellect does trickle down to the emotions, and then yes, that then does affect our day-to-day conduct, for sure. But it's got to trickle down then, and it's got to be manifest in a state of emotions to do that. Can't be in a state of intellect. So that's really intellect and emotions. But how do we connect to our intellect and our emotions? Is the third layer, thought, speech, and action. So not just thought, but also speech and action affect our intellect and emotions. And it's all of these 5 garments, thought, speech, and action being the most external. So the most external garment is action, then speech, and then thought is a bit of a bridge between the external garment and an internal garment. We always think, unlike speech and action, we can stop. Versus intellect and emotion are the internal garments that are part of us that we can't just get rid of very easily. We can change our speech, our intellect and our emotions. We can change it, but it's very difficult. But we can do it. Of course, we can do it, and that's part of the toil of being a human and being a Jew, is to change our mind with learning Torah, and our heart with something called avodah, as our emotions through avodah, through spiritual, emotional toil of self-correction and self-rectification and purification. Now, the thought, speech, and action, the outer 3 garments, are the channels to the inner 2 garments. Speech being particularly the most powerful, but also, I meant thought being the most powerful, but also speech and action. And when we do actions and speak good words of positivity and goodness and kindness, it trickles down into our intellect and our emotions. It trickles down and affects our intellect and our emotions. So there was once a woman, who the doctor said that she was hopeless, that she was just completely selfish, which is, by the way, very uncommon for a female. Not trying to be funny, but females in general are much more selfless than males. So this was a very, very rare case. And the doctor said she was absolutely hopeless and couldn't, she was just going to be selfish the rest of her life. And the Rebbe said to her, when you're at the Shabbos table, pass the salt to people around you. You know, what does that have to do with anything? The Rebbe explained that action of passing, of giving, that action of kindness would slowly affect her emotions. Even if she wasn't able to speak those kind words yet, but she could at least do an action of kindness that will slowly affect and help her emotions. Well, surely it did. Surely it did. So there's one more thing I want to discuss over here. Right, I had to pause the video and think. There's one more thing I want to discuss, and that is being a hypocrite for good. Every character trait could be for bad or for good. What's a bad hypocrite? When somebody means or speaks about good character traits, but does the opposite, right? What's a good hypocrite? A good hypocrite is when somebody inside feels a negative emotion, or an emotion of hatred, or whatever it may be, or even thinks it, or even intellectually believes it inside their mind, a deep belief, but acts differently, or speaks differently, speaks words of goodness, and acts good emotions. And so that's a good hypocrite, with the intention of slowly transforming the belief and the feeling of one's heart. That's a good hypocrite. And that is so critical. You know, there's a joke, and the guy goes, no, it's not really a joke. Unfortunately, I believe that it happened more than once. Like a Jew goes to Shul on Yom Kippur, only on Yom Kippur, once a year. And he goes to the rabbi, you know, I feel like I'm a hypocrite. Every other day of the year, I don't go to Shul. Then Yom Kippur, I go to Shul. I should stop going to Shul in Yom Kippur. I'm being a hypocrite to myself. And the rabbi said to you, you got it upside down. Every other day, you're being a hypocrite. In Yom Kippur, you're being your true self. Unfortunately, that's the truth. It's a very deep truth. And not only do I believe because of the Torah I've learned, I feel because of the experiences that Hashem has given me. I feel that. I believe that. I feel that. I'm one with it. And the truth is that we must stop being a hypocrite. A bad hypocrite, and we must be a good hypocrite, that even if we don't feel it, or even if we don't truly believe it deep down, we nevertheless can do it. Do the good action, the one we know is what we should be doing right now, whatever that may be.